The 6 to 7 Figure Show, episode 54. Let's hit it.
Broadcasting from the Valley of the Sun outside Phoenix, Arizona. This is the 6 to 7 Figure Show. Tired of working so hard and having no time? Take your six-figure practice and turn it to a thriving seven-figure enterprise. And now, your host, author, speaker, mentor, and strategist, Frank Bria.
Hey everyone, welcome to the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and today I am absolutely thrilled to be joined by Gabe Arnold, who's the founder and Chief Pencil Sharpener at copywritertoday.net. It's a subscription-based article writing service. Gabe, in his early 20s, saw his construction business hit by the downturn in real estate and to the market of like a $1 million bankruptcy. But Gabe's always enjoyed the technical and the marketing side of the business. And so started building websites for clients as a freelancer, noticed that the content creation was the part that was holding people up from the sites going live. And there was rarely any content being added after he had finished the site. So he came up with the idea for a monthly subscription model to both resolve the pain point for his clients and generate recurring income for his business. And those of you know I'm a fan of that. So the way that Gabe sums it up is basically by saying, that creating a subscription model business has turned out to be one of the best things I've ever invested my time in. It's led me to grow from barely being able to provide for my family to the first time in my life reaching a six-figure income and the flexibility to truly work when I want to. When the company started, Gabe hustled and wrote every single customer order himself for the first 2 months, and then developed a recruitment system to find qualified writers, and now manages a team of 50 remote workers. Gabe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Frank. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to dig into this switch over from real estate to writing. Now, I know you kind of went through websites, but content that you got to kind of have a skill for that, or at least, I don't know, sometimes just like buckle down and actually do it kind of thing. At least that's the way it is for me. So how did that transition happen?
So here's a story of hope for all your listeners. I could not read or write until the second grade.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, and from there, it was not easy. From there, I journaled all the time and tried to write, and it took me until I turned, this is crazy. It took me until I turned 30 to actually find my writing voice. And everything I wrote until I was 30 was just absolute garbage. And I would never recommend anybody read it. And if you ever found anything out in the archives or happened upon one of my I have horrible handwriting too. But if you ever found any of that stuff, I'm sorry for you. But anyway, when I figured out how to write, which is the point that you let go and stop telling yourself that you need to sound a certain way and just start writing and speaking in your own voice, that's the easiest way to write.
Yeah.
When I figured that out, that was a huge turning point. And losing the construction company when I went bankrupt because of the housing market downturn, you have a lot of time on your hands when you go from having 50 employees to having no money, no employees, no work. So I was like, man, well, how did I build the business? What did I actually like about it? What would I do again if I could do it again? What did I learn? And I was like, man, I really like the tech. I really like the marketing. I love putting things together. I mean, building something you can build digitally, you can build in the physical world, right? Yeah. And so that was the point for me where I was like, wow, I should really dig in and focus in on this marketing stuff, because that's how I built that company in the first place. And that's why it felt easy. I mean, I did some things wrong. Obviously, if you lose a company, you do things wrong.
Yeah. But I don't know anyone who isn't a seasoned entrepreneur who's got some scars from that. Like, I just don't. In fact, it's kind of funny. It's a side note. We'll get back to that in a second. But I was right after one of the companies that I had tanked and like crashed into the ground, went out and was asking for venture capital funding. We're asking for multi-million dollars to like get things up and running. And I kind of, as we were about ready to close the deal, I kind of felt like I needed to confess that one of the companies I just had, like, we crashed into the ground. And the venture capital guy said to me something that I'll never forget. He's like, good. We want people who have failed, because people who never fail think they're God, and they think they can, like, they're one trick, that they're going to, everything they touch is going to turn to gold, and they don't listen to advice. They don't learn anything. I was like, okay, good. Well, we don't have that problem
anymore. Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's totally true. Like, I have hundreds, if not thousands, of failed ideas, and that's what keeps me moving forward. But anyway, I'm way lost on whatever question you asked me, but that's how I got to figuring out.
No, that's good. That's, yeah.
I like the marketing stuff, and then I liked building websites. So I built and sold 1,000 websites myself, start to scratch, design, coded everything. And then I would go back and look at these websites that I built people and look at their blog, and it would still say, welcome to our blog. We're going to post stuff soon. 2 months, 2 years later. And I realized, man, content is a problem for people. So that was kind of the origin of the idea.
Well, there are going to be a lot of people listening to this who are going to feel personally not insulted, but affected by the words of having the same content and not posting anything new. It's true. That happens a lot. I want to reflect back to this story you have about coming into writing late. And that, I mean, to me, it strikes me that probably is why you're good at it. I mean, one of the things that I see in a lot of folks is that if you kind of go about it the regular way, if you kind of take this regular path, there's nothing extraordinary. There's nothing new or different about what it is that you do. And content writing is not regular writing. It's not your typical, report, book report.
Yeah, it's not academic writing that you were taught. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's really good. So as you're working with clients, this is always, I think, when people are looking at bringing in a copywriter or bringing in writers for stuff, it's sort of capturing their voice. Like you said, it's, writing, suddenly not worrying about how things sound, but like writing as yourself. How are you guys capturing that for your clients? As you're in turn sort of stepping into their shoes and trying to be their voice. What's that process like?
Yeah. So when we started this, and I check this periodically, but I'm not a huge believer in paying attention to the competition. But when I did start out, to answer your question, I looked at what was out there, and the norm, which is still a big part of the norm. I don't think there's a ton of services like us yet, was that you could just go buy a one-off article. You're
right.
Like, I need a blog post. I can go pay some service. Random writer will pick up this article and write it for me. And I'm supposed to, I'm not a writer. I'm hiring a writer. Remember, like the average customer, I'm supposed to explain to them the voice I want and how I want it, and just hope this one-off article is going to be amazing. It's like one date with the person. That's your only shot. You can never get together with them again.
Yeah.
And so that's the norm in the industry. So I realized a couple things. One, that's a recipe for failure before it even starts, because there's no way I can get to know you as a client and write in your voice. And two, it strings the writer along, the company along in this position where, like, oh, we need you today. If it works out and we're really lucky, like maybe that's 10, 15, 20% of the time, then we'll do it again. And if not, I'm going to go try somebody else. And it creates a bad outcome and no value for the client. So when we designed it as a subscription service, it was a win-win, because we now get to hang out with our clients over a period of time. And we always tell our clients, don't expect the first article to be perfect. If you think it's going to be perfect, please don't sign up with us. That's actually what we say to them. But what's going to happen is you're going to get the first article back and say, I liked how you said this, but you know what, this part really isn't how I wanted it to sound. So make some tweaks. We revise it for free, change everything. And then we write the next piece. And now we know, oh, Frank doesn't want it to be formal. He wants it to be super conversational. And here's some of the words he uses. And over the course of a month, and then 2 months and 3 months and beyond, we know who you are. We know what you want. And it sounds just like you were writing it. And on top of that, you have this consistent, engine of content going out for you. We really try to give businesses a voice, because as business owners and entrepreneurs, as managers, like, the last thing, regardless of if you like writing or not, the last thing you have time to do is sit down and tell your audience what you do, which is unfortunate. So that's the process.
But that's a fascinating insight that you've just sort of like stumbled across it. It's now it's one of those things where you look back and you're like, duh, it's obvious, but no one's really said that before, because we do this in other areas of marketing. We tell people, you know, with paid ads, like, you're going to burn it in. It's going to take some time. You're going to have to test it out. But in writing, there is this sort of expectation that, you know, your copywriter who's never worked with you before and has never done anything with you before, after one interview is just kind of nail it. And that's, it is really setting up for failure that way. That's a really good
point. That's the whole industry. And like, I've seen some companies pop up with our model, and I hope they all work out. I think the more the better in any, but honestly, everybody sticks with this traditional model that's doomed, in my opinion.
So the one-off copywriter thing. That's a really good point. Are you finding that you're attracting a particular kind of business or industry that's needing your services right now?
Yes and no. The one thing that we do find is that over 50% of our business is for agencies, because they need this on an ongoing basis for multiple clients, and you can scale up infinitely with us. We have clients who have a single account with us. We have clients who have multiples who we do 300 or 400 articles for a month.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We write over 1 million words a month now. So we write a lot of content. And so the agency part is always consistent, but inside of that, end of the day, we have a very systematic process that we can write. You know, we write for attorneys, we write for health coaches, we write for entrepreneurs that are talking about, you know, time management. We write for health, you know, cooking, you know, blogs. I mean, like, it's such a huge range that in that sense, we haven't niched down, and that also breaks all the rules. Like, everybody says niche down, and like, I get it, and I understand it, and I advise it in a lot of cases, but in cases, it was like, writing is writing once you figure out a process and a formula that allows you.
Right now, you're attracting just kind of a broad base. I would imagine also that you're seeing, because you definitely have discussed the time element for entrepreneurs, of saving them time for this, but I suspect you're also seeing that, you know, writing's not everyone's gig, you know, and it's not the thing for everybody. What are some of the major content mistakes you're seeing entrepreneurs make that, you know, when they're making them, it's kind of like, hey, we ought to probably get a professional in to do this for us?
Most commonly, people are super inconsistent with their content, and you're not going to get any value out of inconsistency in anything, especially content. Because if you're consistent, your audience will be like, oh, every week I get a new post, or every couple of weeks I get something in depth that's really thorough. So consistency is always number one. The second thing is people obsess about every single word they're writing instead of focusing on what they are writing, what they're actually trying to share. And I'll any day take good information that I need to have an editor fix, then I'll worry about, you know, you sending me something that's just a bunch of fluff and doesn't solve any problems.
Right. Yeah.
And so because almost all of us, you know, academically, we're taught to write in a certain way, that's not how the real world writes.
No.
And so we have this voice of a parent, a teacher, somebody saying, oh, your writing sucks, or you need to do it this way, or you need to indent your paragraphs, or something stupid that has nothing to do with what you're trying to accomplish. You're trying to, in words, have a cup of coffee with somebody and explain to them what you do. And when people get that and they let go of fear, ego, all that stuff, then it flows, because editing is the easy part. Once you just let the content out. And so that's a real common thing that I see people that just struggle. It's because they're super overthinking and they're editing while they write. And that's like rule number one. Don't edit.
That was hard for me. Like when I wrote my first book, I had to like talk myself out of that all the time, because I'd like delete. You're never going to make any progress with that. You also brought up a really fascinating point that I want to kind of emphasize here. You talked about one of the classic errors. I see this all the time too, where people are writing, but it's not particularly useful. It's fluff, or it's like feel good or whatever. And it's almost like we've forgotten that the word content means that there's actual content in the words themselves. And it sounds like what you're saying is kind of letting the entrepreneur get out of their own head and have another pair of eyes take a look at this will help them kind of not worry about the the vanity metrics of it and really get down to the communication element of what you're writing.
Yeah, exactly. Any great writer or copywriter you read, and I'm sure, I've written a couple small, not so successful books. I have some bigger ones on the way, but you've written a book, so you'll understand this too. If you sit down to write with no experience and nothing of value to share, it's going to be a blank page for a long time, or you'll write a bunch of stuff that nobody wants to read.
Right.
If you go out there and learn to solve people's problems and do your thing as the entrepreneur, you're a consultant, you're a coach, you're shipping a physical product, you're building houses, whatever you do, then you will have something to say because you're out in the real world doing it.
Yeah.
Too many times people sit down and try to say something and they have no experience and they have nothing to say. If you're not interesting in person, having a one-on-one conversation, then you're not going to be able to write either. And so I make that point because when it comes down to serving your audience, if your audience needs to know how to install Google Analytics and how to read the reports, get to the meat of it and explain it. And if you don't know how to do that, watch a YouTube video and explain how to do it, because that will be more useful than you making up something you don't know about. And that happens sometimes. And
that is a really good point. I like to say there are worse things than a blank page.
A page full of nothing.
Yeah. That's really cool. I want to pivot a little bit to your business model because it's fascinating to me. You're doing essentially what a lot of people are saying you shouldn't do, which is to create an agency around where there's this physical work that needs to happen, right? Mm-hmm. So the fact that you've got, that you guys are cranking out 1 million words a month tells me you clearly have turned this into a process. But getting people on board has got to be sort of one of the number one bottlenecks. And you have a recruitment process that you talk about, and that is really, I think, a driving force behind your guys' success. Can you talk us through what that looks like for other folks who are kind of doing something similar where they need to get good talent in on a regular basis?
Yeah. If we think about the ecosystem of the job market and getting hired and putting a job, an ad out there, if I put a job posting out there and I get all these applicants to get resumes and I go the traditional route, who am I going to be talking to? Most people polish up their resume when they hate their job or when they're unemployed.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a somewhat of a generalization, but a lot of the time that's what's happening.
Yeah.
So let's assume, we'll make some assumptions for the point of the principle here. Let's assume that 80% of those resumes you get are from people that are unemployed in the moment. Maybe not any by fault of their own, or maybe because they shouldn't have been, maybe they were lazy. I mean, let's be honest, there are lazy people out there. So you then interview them and they really need the money and they really need the job. They're going to sell themselves and tell you how amazing they are. And you are going to have to make an entire judgment about, do I want to get married to this person? Because when you hire somebody, you're marrying them into your company.
It's a commitment for sure.
It's a commitment, and it's going to cost you time and money and heartache one way or the other. So you're making a whole decision on one or two conversations where they are absolutely should be on their best behavior. You should not be on your best behavior, but they're going to say,
"Can it get any better than the interview?"
Of course, I can write 10,000 words a day, or I've done all these great things, and like some vague references to maybe they have done it or haven't done it. Right. That's awesome. I'm super glad that the rest of the business world runs on that model. I think it's a complete waste of everybody's time, and I think it's insulting to the applicants. And I think it's really insulting to a business that's trying to grow and provide value. Maybe not insulting. Maybe I'm being a little too aggressive. It's inefficient. But so instead of me saying, "Oh, Frank, you want to write for me?" and you're like, "I'm the greatest writer in the world," and you just told me you write a book, which I believe you, and I'm going to go check your book out, but I haven't seen it. So, people will say things that in their mind are true.
Yeah.
So instead of me just saying, "All right, I'll hire you," right? We put people through a completely automated process and says, "Oh, you can write? That's great. We want real writers. Go ahead and provide us 2 samples." And you can write the samples. And if you follow our very simple and easy to follow instruction manual, and you write them on topics that we commonly get, and you deliver the quality of work we need, then we would love to consider hiring you. And so what happens is, I haven't checked stats in 6 months because I don't manage that part anymore. But last year I checked stats and we got about 400 applications for the year of those people made it to the final page and submitted samples. And out of those, I think we hired 10.
Wow. I mean, that is about the level of filtration you have to go through with that process. And you have hit on the pain point, which is, I think most entrepreneurs have a really hard time with this because, number one, it is a very inefficient process, the sort of traditional way to do things. And I think most of us are kind of not sure if our gut's right when people are telling us, so that people are really good at stories, especially in our industry, man. You go try to hire a salesperson. You get some great stories.
Yeah. And so we've automated the process. And then at the end, there's an email that's sent to my general manager and to our writers manager that says, before you even consider hiring this person, check these 10 things. Did they use this font size and this font type? Like, details matter. We do everything the same way. And then they have to submit a quick video clip. So we, do this. They have to verify that they're in the United States, so we don't hire any writers out of the United States. And then if they check these 3 things off, which takes them literally a glance when that application email, then they will open this samples and dig in a little bit. And then we reach out and say, you're hired. There's no interview. If we say you're hired and we're going to do an onboarding call to make a final thing, but it saves us hours of work. Yeah. And we work hard and we crank out a lot of content, and we're here to serve our clients and make their life better. And so we want to eliminate people that didn't really want the job.
Yeah.
And so that process has been absolutely, critical, because I figured out one time, like, I would spend 200 to 300 hours a year interviewing if I didn't have that. I have no interest in that. And the last thing I'll say, because I think this is important for everybody here, is I'm a bleeding heart. I want to hire everybody. I love helping people. And I used to back in the day think that if I hired somebody, I could help them. And that's the totally wrong way to help people.
That's true.
So
that is true. Exactly. I made that mistake too. So I totally yeah, I'm laughing with you, not at you. No, for sure.
I've done it wrong. So it makes me objective, and it makes me be able to, I don't do any hiring anymore, which is very nice, because I would just hire people that I liked. And you need to hire people that are good at what they do, and that fit into your culture. Right.
Well, it's really what's really interesting about your process is that you've honed it down. You've got exactly what you're looking for. You've got it down to a very specific skill set with very specific detail orientation. And that's how you win. Anyone who's going to scale, you guys have that figured out. Anyone who's going to take any kind of an agency process, I don't care if it's a writer or a project manager or whatever, there's got to be a very defined skill set that's being applied to a very particular job task. And when that's the case, you can do what you guys are doing. It's the people who are still trying to hire superstars to kind of run everything and don't really know what they're looking for that really run into problems scaling up a personnel organization. So that's great. That's good stuff. What would your recommendation be, or what advice do you wish had been given you before you started all of this that might have made things easier, that you might be able to pass along to others behind you on the path?
My girlfriend and business partner and life partner, Rachel, said this to me, I don't know, almost a year ago. And I'm sure she said it to me before, but I finally heard it. There's a little lesson there, but that aside, she said, anytime you try to do things the normal way, it just crashes and burns. And the lesson for everybody is, stop trying to do it the way you think you're supposed to do it or the way everybody does it, because usually what you see on the outside is not what's happening. And start really paying attention to your intuition and get to know yourself better, because all business problems are personal problems, and all business successes are personal successes. Yeah. And I finally figured out, and I still screw this up sometimes, but I finally figured out, if I do it the normal way, it's just miserable and it doesn't work. And if I do, I'm doing it, like you said, early on, a business that shouldn't work.
Well, I didn't say that. No. It shouldn't work. It's that a lot of people can't pull this off.
Exactly. But a lot of people can't. And so don't try to do my model exactly. Yeah. Do what you would love doing day in and day out. Do what comes naturally to you. I'm a systems process guy, and I like doing that stuff. So everybody we hire now for other products and services we have and other divisions and the businesses and things we have, they all go through automated hiring because it's like, I'm not good at interviewing. Yeah. Clearly, I've hired so many of the wrong people. So I'm like, I have to save myself from myself. And so I would encourage people to develop their intuition more and be more reflective on all your experiences and say, oh, like that didn't work out. Like it wasn't the ideal outcome, but what was good out of it, or what did I learn, and what am I going to do better next time?
Yeah.
And that helps you get to know yourself, because then you'll be able to build a business that fits you. These businesses are not cookie cutter. None of them ever are. Yeah. And when you start to realize that and you build it in a way that's good for you as the owner, good for your team, things can really succeed. When you try to do it, like if I try to do my business like you, Frank, I put myself out of business. I don't even know how you run your business, but if I tried to model exactly what you did and literally, carbon copy it, it would fall apart. It's not the right way to do it. So
totally.
That's my advice on that front.
No, that's great. And full circles. I mean, we're essentially ending where we started, which is authenticity and doing things your own way, which is, when you started writing, that's exactly what you did. So here we are. Same thing with the business model. I endorse that. I think that's great. We're out of time, Gabe. So unfortunately, I'd love to keep talking about this. But before we go, one last question. For those people who are interested in connecting with you, your business, and the services that you provide, what's a great way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, if they want to go check out copywritertoday.net, we give free samples to anybody that's interested. That way you can understand the entire process. And so I'd highly encourage everybody to check that out. And you can find me on Facebook, LinkedIn, just search for Gabe Arnold. It says serial entrepreneur under there. So
great. Excellent. And links below the video here for those who are on the YouTube channel, on the show notes page. If you're out and about listening to audio, come on back to the show notes page, click on through to the link, and you'll find Gabe and his amazing team that's cranking out 1 million words a month. Just like spins my head. Gabe, thanks so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it. Appreciate you taking the time with us.
Thank you, Frank. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks so much for you being with us on this episode. I know you got a lot of places to go, a lot of things you could do. So if you're spending time with us, we really appreciate that. And you giving us the trust to help you put your business in place there. And this has been the 6 to 7 Figure Show. I'm your host, Frank Bria, and we will catch you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.